So we're going to mix things all kinds of ways up today. So I'm going to preach from down here. How about that? So whoever's running the camera, they're in big trouble. They got to follow me today. It's interactive today. So we're excited you're here. Really excited about this series as we kind of get through this. You just need to know that when October gets here, we have got some amazing things planned, and we're really excited about what's coming up in those series and things we're going to do then. And if you're new, October is the month for you, because we are going to really communicate as clearly as we can what we're about. And not just in theory, but very tangibly, very applicable. Who are we? What are we going to be doing? What's that going to look like? And how can you get involved? And we're going to spend a lot of time defining our identity. But before we get to our identity, we really felt like this was the series to begin with, because we need to know who Jesus is. And so this I Am series, every time they would begin to talk about who are you and what are you doing, Jesus would answer with these I am statements. And really what he was answering was the same question that we've asked throughout this whole series, and that is, what is God like? Right? Because that's the question they asked, that's the question you and I are asking, it's the question our world is asking. What is God like? And what we've discovered is each time Jesus would say, I am, essentially what he was saying is, God is like Jesus. Right? That we can narrow it down, we can get a little bit better view of who he is by looking at Jesus and listening to these statements. And so kind of the tagline for the series, what we have based it around, is this idea that when we see who Jesus is, then we can see who he's calling us to be. That as we discover God, and God is like Jesus, and here's what Jesus did, but it's not just who Jesus was, it's who he's calling you to be. It's who he's calling me to be. It's this interactive growth process in which the more we discover of him, the more we discover of ourselves. And so today, what I want to do is look at one more of these, and it's such an important statement. Because it was at the end of this statement that Jesus would make that really everything began to unravel from a world perspective. It was at this point when Jesus got through the story that we're going to talk about today, that the plotting of his murder would begin. That everybody listened to what Jesus had to say, and they looked and they said, listen, this guy is everything he's claiming is so practical, it's changing so many lives, that if he continues to talk, everybody's going to follow him. And we don't want that, so they began to plot his murder and his death. And so what we want to do today is we want to walk through John chapter 11. And if you didn't have your Bible study time this week, we're going to cover enough verses for your whole week today. All right? And so I know for me, when we do one thing and a lot of one thing, I need some diversity in helping kind of pay attention and stay locked in. So I've got a secret weapon today. This week, I said, hey, who in our church has like a really cool, deep voice, right? Just a good radio announcer, musician type voice. And number one voice that was recommended was my buddy Steve Parkhurst right here, right? So give us like a big deep breath, like welcome, welcome. That is so good, right? Is that not good? I like that. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to have to anticipate when Steve gets to jump in, and no pressure, you're playing Jesus today. So don't screw it up. No pressure there at all. But so he's going to help us out, so stay engaged, stay with me as we go through this story. Because what we did is last week we had John chapter 10, in which Jesus says, I'm a good shepherd. We've looked at this sheep-shepherd relationship for a couple of weeks now. And what we find is when we get to John chapter 11 and we look at what Jesus actually did, it doesn't look like very good shepherding. If anything, it looks like just the opposite. And so we've got to remember that's who he is, and that he's trying to teach us something else. He's adding a layer to this as we go through this. And so while it may not feel like he's being a good shepherd, hang in there. And I think we'll see exactly what it is he's up to. So start with me in John chapter 1. Hopefully you brought a Bible or a device with it on it. If not, we'll have it up on the big, massive wall of Scripture behind me there. Let's start in verse 1. It says, Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. Now this is important, right? Don't blow through this. Because this isn't the random woman that snuck up in the crowd and touched his garment. This isn't some blind man that he'd never met that he healed. This isn't feeding the masses. This is a friend. This is somebody Jesus knows. This is personal. There's some emotion invested here because he knows Lazarus. He spent time with his sister. They're like family. And so there's a relationship there. There's a personal friendship there. So verse 3. So the sister sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love. See, this isn't a stranger. The one you love is sick. And when he heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. And that's really cool to know, but it's not very helpful if you're the messenger, is it? Right? If you're the guy that Mary and Martha said, hey, Craig, would you run go get Jesus real quick? He's the guy that fed a lot of people, has healed some folks. Would you get him and make sure and bring him back? Don't come back without him. And you get to Jesus and you're like, Jesus, your friend Lazarus, he's sick. What, can you come and help? And he says, no, I'm good. This won't end in death. You don't have to worry about it. That's great, Jesus, but I really need you to come with me because Mary and Martha asked me to bring you. They said, don't come back unless I have you. And he goes on. He says, listen, the sickness will not end in death. It's for the glory. It's for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. And that's tremendous theology. Like we could have a whole sermon about how this sickness, this death would glorify God, but it's not very much help in the moment, is it? Your friend's sick. I don't need your theology. I don't need a lesson. Jesus, I just need you to show up and do something. I know you can, so will you hurry up and get there? Like, that's great, teach the crowds, but come on. And it says that because, there's such a great plea, it says, now Jesus loved Martha, and he loved her sister, and he loved Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he did what anybody in their right mind would do. He stayed put. Right? Didn't move a muscle. Stayed there 2 more days. He didn't move at all. And I don't know about you, but when I think of that, and I'm coming off of John chapter 10, which he says, I'm the good shepherd, I think, that's not very good shepherding. That's not even Jesus' standard of shepherding when he says, I'm going to go out and find the lost one. I'm going to go out and get the one that's lost and bring it back. Here, he won't even go visit the one he loves that's sick. That doesn't look like very good shepherding to me, but maybe, just maybe, something bigger is going on here. Maybe it's good shepherding because he's about to reveal something. He's about to reveal part of his nature, his character, that we haven't been exposed to just yet. So verse 7, he says to his disciples, he says, let's go back to Judea. But Rabbi, they said, a short while ago, the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet you're going back? Jesus, we were just there. And they tried to kill you. And really what the disciples were saying was, Jesus, we were just there. And because they were going to kill you, they probably were going to kill us. And we're not ready to die yet, Jesus. Jesus, you really want to go back there? After he said this, he went on to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going there to wake him up. His disciples replied, Lord, if he sleeps, he'll get better, right? I love these guys. They're so human, right? You know that nobody wrote this story wanting to make the disciples look good, because they're like me. They just say the dumb things that come to their head. Hey, if he sleeps, let's just let him sleep. He'll wake up eventually, and we don't have to go get killed. So let's just stay put. But Jesus obviously wasn't talking about that. He had been speaking of his death, and his disciples thought that he had meant natural sleep. So then he told them very plainly. You ever feel like that? You ever wish God would just like, Dave, pay attention. Very plain. Lazarus is dead. Right? You're missing all the hyperbole. You're missing all the parables. You're not getting it. Wake up. He's dead. Right? I so wish God would talk to me like that sometimes. Minus the hitting of the head, because his hand's bigger than mine. And he just tells them plainly, he's dead. And for your sake, I'm glad I wasn't there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. So he's about to develop something. He's about to expose them into something. But they're wrestling with this idea. Believe what? Like, we've been believing. We've been following you. What do you want us to believe in? And so Thomas, also known as Didymus, he said to the rest of them, well, let's go too, so that we can die with him. Right? Which we kind of chuckle at, and that's not the best approach. But what a statement of faith, right? All right, Jesus, if you're going to go die, we're going to go die with you. Like, we're in. Let's go. And just that commitment that there's enough belief there that says, okay, I guess I'm I'm going to go with you if you're going. Come on, guys. Let's load up and go. So on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now, Bethany was less than 2 miles away from Jerusalem, and many Jews, probably a lot of the same ones that were plotting to kill Jesus, a lot of the same ones that didn't believe in who Jesus was, they had come to Martha and they'd come to Mary to comfort them in the loss of her brother. Now, I'm skeptical. Right? Part of me says they weren't really there to comfort. Part of me says maybe they were there to say, see, I told you, that Jesus guy you've been talking so much about, he could have done something and he didn't. He's not really got, come cry on my shoulder, we'll console you, we'll help you, but give up on that Jesus guy. Now maybe I'm skeptical because I hear voices like that. I've experienced that. I've seen other people that I care about go through that where they so badly want to follow Jesus, but there's voices in their life, there's people in their life who just come along and say, what's that Jesus guy really doing for you? It's not all that great. Why are you spending so much time? Why are you putting so much energy? Why are you not doing this? You don't need him. He's not really who he said he was. And that's a voice we hear in our world. So they're there, and they're supposedly there to console. So when Martha, look at what Martha does. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him. So she hears. She leaves the crowd. She leaves the funeral. She leaves this time together with family and friends. And she goes out and she meets Jesus, but not Mary. Look at what Mary does. Mary stayed at home. Do you ever know a lady that's really mad? Don't point. You may be sitting next to her. But I mean just like angry mad. Like women have a whole new layer of mad that I didn't know existed until I got a little older in life. And I could just see this, right? Because you know, we're Midwest, South, whatever region you call us. Like we eat to help our hurt feelings, right? So I'm envisioning this big meal, right? Because when somebody dies in your family, people bring 8,065 million casseroles to your house. And there's just food everywhere. And everybody's eating. And Mary's like, don't fix him a plate. He didn't show up when I asked him to show up. Right? Because Mary bent over backwards. She sent a messenger. Hey, come. Help Lazarus. Come. Help the one you love. And now you want to show up? Now that there's fried chicken and mashed potatoes, you think now's a good time to come visit Jesus? How many other friends did you have get sick? How many other friends did you have dying? Don't fix him any food. Don't let him in this house. I'm not going out to see him. Well, you kind of mad? And it's amazing to me how it's something so little, and yet it sparks so much emotion in us. And we can begin to think irrationally, and we can begin to get confused, and we can begin to get frustrated. And listen, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with her frustration. There's nothing wrong with where she's at in this. Because, listen, the reality is, if I was her, I'd probably feel the exact same way. Jesus, what are you thinking showing up now? Or like she says in verse 21, Lord, if you had been here. How many times have you said that in your life? Lord, if you had just been here. She said, if you had just been here, my brother would not have died. Or maybe for you, it's, God, if you had just been here, my marriage wouldn't have fallen apart. You saw me pray. You knew I was pleading. You knew I was in it. Why? God, if you would have just showed up, we wouldn't have lost that baby. God, if you had just showed up, I wouldn't have got that report from the doctor. God, if you had just showed up. And thousands of times in our lives, we say things just like that. And we deal with that emotion, we deal with that frustration, we deal with our anger. And what I want you to know today is that grieving, there's nothing wrong with it. Right? I think we live in a culture sometimes that says you can't be upset, you can't be angry, especially not at God. Right? You just need to just bury it down deep, just deal with it. As Christians, we grieve. We grieve because we've got stuff going on in our life. We deal with family issues. We deal with loss. We deal with sickness. We grieve, but what sets Christians apart from the rest of the world is that when we grieve with hope. Because we grieve not thinking that this is the end, not thinking that this is all there is. We grieve knowing that there's something better out there, that even when we don't understand it, even when we don't feel like it, even when we have no idea what God is up to, that He's there. And listen, God encourages that. Right? Wrestle with Him. Argue with Him. You spend your quiet time reading your Bible and something doesn't make sense and something doesn't sit right with you, argue with God. Wrestle with Him. He's big enough to handle it. He wants you to be invested. He wants you to be there. Because look at what Martha does, right? What she says next shows that you can wrestle and you can grieve and you can be confused and frustrated but still have hope. Because Martha says, God, but I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Look how quickly her grieving turns into hope. And Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. He says, listen, you may not understand it, you may not see it, it may not feel like I'm doing anything, but you've got to trust me. And she did. She said, God, I know who you are. I know what you can do. I still trust you. Martha answered, I know He will rise again in the resurrection in the last day. See, Martha believed in that one thing that you and I have to believe in. If we're truly going to be Christ's followers, if we're going to be different in this world, she believed in the resurrection and we have to believe in it. That if we're in a relationship with God, if we're working to submit our lives to Him, to be led by Him, to worship and praise and love Him, that someday He's going to resurrect us. That we will get to live with Him for eternity in a resurrection body. That there will be, as we just sang, resurrection power. That we're not in this alone, that this life is not all there is. And so she remembered that and she believed that. And Jesus looks at her and He says, listen, this life isn't all there is, there's more. That's why what we do here matters. That's why every Sunday you should wake up with a sense of urgency. Whew, God, I hope today's the day. God, I hope today's the day somebody else gives their life to you. God, I hope today's the day that somebody else meets you, that's freed from their chains, that overcomes their addiction, that breaks that habit. That's why you should have urgency with your kids. It's great to teach them sports and educate them with math and science and all these things. But do you feel a sense of urgency to tell them about Jesus? To raise them up knowing that they have hope in spite of a cruel world. That there's something more out there. There's an urgency here. That what we do matters because there's a resurrection. And Jesus looks at her and He tells her, He says, listen, this resurrection you believe in, He says, I am the resurrection and the life. He says it's not an event, it's a person. He says, I'm the person you're looking for. I'm what's going to give you resurrection. I'm what's going to give you life. And He says, the one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Right, and that's the question that you and I have to answer every day. Do we really believe this? Do we live that way? Does it impact how we live? Does it impact how we treat others? See, because as we get to this point, Jesus has to back it up, doesn't He? Like, you can't make those types of claims and then just be done. Like, if He's going to claim to be a resurrection life, He better do something pretty impressive to show it. But you and I better make a choice whether we believe it or not. Because He can do His part, but we have to do ours. Yes, Lord, she replied, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who has come into the world. And so after He says all this, she goes to her sister. She goes back to Mary, and she pulls her aside, says in private, she says, hey, Mary, the teacher's here. And he wants to talk to you. He's asking just for you. And Mary can't put up a front anymore, can she? Right? There's no more sitting back just being mad and sulking. Now she's got to come face to face with Jesus. And she's got to either lay into Him or she's got to back down. But it says when Mary heard this, she got up and she quickly went to Him. And we read stuff like that in church and we just, in our mind, she's there. She ran. People didn't run just for fun back then. She ran out to Him, and He wasn't there yet. He was still out where Martha was. But she ran out to Him. And he was where he had entered the village, still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to mourn there. So now it's not just Mary and Jesus, it's Mary and Jesus and a crowd. Because they want to see what's going on. They want to be there for her. And they come out and they meet Jesus in that place. And when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw Him, the anger disappears. The emotion floods over her. She falls at His feet. She says it again. Lord, if you had been there, Lord, if you had been there, my brother would not have died. And I want you to put yourself in the place of Jesus for a minute. And I want you to feel that emotion. Like, I can't do it justice because we're not in that moment, but you have to imagine. This isn't just a story. This isn't just something that happened once. This is real life. These are human emotions. That Jesus is so personal, so in that moment. He knows what's going to happen. And yet these couple of women that he loves, his family, his friends that he loves, they're hurting. They're mourning. They're grieving. In verse 33 he says, when Jesus saw her weeping, and he saw the Jews that had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. He hurt. He felt for them. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. And as he walks along, shortest verse in the Bible, but maybe one of the most powerful, Jesus wept. He wept. And I don't know if he cried from empathy and just seeing their emotion. I don't know if he cried because he was just exhausted from trying to tell them over and over and over again what was going to happen and about resurrection. They still weren't getting it. I don't know if he cried just because of all that was going on. But there's huge emotion there. And that's important because he's the most powerful being there is. He made all this. He put all this in motion, and yet here he is, and he's walking along, and he's in it, and he can just speak, and life happens. He formed the land. He built the animals. He was there in the beginning with God. And he created all this. He decided that the ground was too hard one day, and so he walked across water to get where he was going. Here he is, the most powerful thing. He can speak, and the storm stops. I was watching footage of the hurricane this week. I saw a video. Just the magnitude and the power of the wind and the waves, and they're beating against and ripping off docks and piers and destroying homes. Just the sheer force. And it just kind of came over me. God's infinitely more powerful than that. He created that. He spoke into that. And with just a word, he calms that. He's the most authoritative God. He's bigger than any other God we've tried to manufacture or muster up throughout history. Here he is, the most powerful, most authoritative, most polarizing figure in history. Right? You can't bring up Jesus that people don't go one of two ways. You either become instant family and you've got things in common and you support one another, or people want nothing to do with you. Or there's hatred involved. He polarizes. And here he is bigger than life, figure, character, and yet in the same moment, all of his power, all of his authority, all of his influence, he's also the most tender man. Because he sees people he loves hurting. And he loves them enough that he hurts with them. So as he's walking along, as he's walking to the place, he cries, he weeps. And the Jews looked at him and said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? And you just, they still don't get it. They still don't get it. Yes, of course he could have. Of course he could have kept that relationship together. Of course he could have taken that sickness away. Of course he could make us all live forever. But he does some of these things. He allows some of those things. Because there are things we're going to experience in storms. There are things we're going to experience in trials. There are things of God we're going to experience in sickness that we miss out on if we don't walk through it. And he doesn't want to see us hurting. He weeps when we weep. But to see God, to trust God, to lean into God. Sometimes he lets these things happen so that we can experience things we would never be able to experience without allowing him to journey with us through that. So he does. In verse 38 says, Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. And it was a cave, with a stone laid across the entrance. I can't imagine what he was thinking at that moment, can you? Because he's just a few weeks out, a few days out from being in his own tomb with his own stone. And he sees it coming. And he's got to be thinking in his head, do they get it? This is what I've been telling them about. This is what I've been telling them to look for. This is what I've said is coming, is going to happen. You think they get it yet? And he walks up, and here he is before this tomb, and then he says, take the stone away. He knows how this is going to end. Mary and Martha had no clue. And the people looking from the crowd had no idea what's about to happen. They had no idea. And so Martha, probably like I would say, like you would say, says, Lord, by this time, there's going to be a bad odor. Or my favorite comical verse from all the Bible, if you look this verse up in the King James, he stinketh much. True story, that's in the Bible, right? If you're not reading your Bible, you're missing out on some great stuff. God did a really good job putting that together, and you should read it. It's fun. It's good stuff. But that's important, though, right? That he stinks, and I'm not going to go into great detail and be gross and all those things, but listen, they didn't have EKGs and CAT scans and MRIs and all that stuff back then. So if he was going to raise the dead to life, they had to be sure he was dead. There had to be some decay. There had to be some smell. There had to be some grossness. So in 4 days, that's happening. Because they didn't embalm, they didn't do all those things, they didn't preserve in any way. And so 4 days go by, and they know, listen, Jesus, this is going to be embarrassing. You're going to move that stone, and the smell's going to come out, and it's going to be bad, and we don't want that. We don't want to be grossed out. We don't want to be embarrassed. There's this whole crowd looking. All of our friends are here. Some of them already don't believe in you, Jesus. Why? Why would you say move the stone? But that's what he does. He says, listen, the stone, move the stone. Take it away. And then Jesus said, didn't I tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? And I don't know if it was guilt or belief or a fun mixture of both, but they took the stone away. And Jesus looked up and he said, Father, I thank you that you've heard me. He says, thank you for listening. God, I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. He said, God, I know what you're up to, but they're having a hard time. So God, I'm so glad that you're listening. And then, Steve, this is your moment. You're ready. In a big, loud voice, Jesus looks into the tomb and he says,
Lazarus, come out.
Yes, that's so good, isn't it? Because I get excited, my voice goes high, but he gets it, right? And so here's all these people. Now say Lazarus and just pause this time, right? He says, move the stone away, and then he says,
Lazarus.
And everybody's looking. And everybody's waiting. And what's about to happen next is going to go one of two ways. Either he's going to do something amazing that's going to change their life forever, or the whole thing was fake. And he says,
come out.
Come out! That's it. That's what he said. Lazarus, come out! And if the story stops right there, it's a really cool story. But we ought to be embarrassed if we hang our hat on it. If the story stops at verse 43, we are the most pitiful group of people for giving up so much time on a Sunday morning for that. Because maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. But you want to know the good news? There's a verse 44. Because he says, Lazarus, come out. And then the dead man came out. He came out, and his hands and his feet, they were wrapped in strips of linen and clothed around his face. And Jesus looked at him. And I love that he looked at him, because these are the folks that doubted. He says, go untie him. Go set him free. Go let him live again. So listen. As we close today, here's what I want you to do. I want you to hear what Jesus would say if he was here right now. I want you to hear Jesus speaking into your life when he says, that marriage is broken, come out. That relationship with your kids that you think is just gone and never recoverable, come out. That Jesus is the resurrection and the light, and He is calling you and I to come and do something, not because we can, but because He is. He says, I am. And so in this moment, what I want you to do is I just want you to stand to your feet, and I just want you to just lean in to the group up here as they play and as they sing. And I just want to celebrate, and I just want to worship a God who is the God of hope, who is the God of resurrection, because He says, I am.